Welcome to a deep dive. We're really going in on this one, folks. Paul's letter to the Romans. It's a text that sparked debate for centuries. Centuries.
It gets to the heart of things, faith, identity, what it means to even be human. Big stuff.
And we're going to unpack it all. Get ready for some surprises along the way, though. Seriously, this isn't some dusty old relic. The ideas here still hit hard today, maybe even more so now. But gotta start basic. We're talking about a letter.
Right, a letter. But not just any letter.
Exactly. This is Paul. Big P calls himself an apostle, which means...
a messenger. Directly appointed by Jesus, at least that's how he sees it.
Okay, so big claims right off the bat. And he's writing to the Christians in Rome. Talk about a power center. Rome back then. Whole different ballgame.
The heart of the Roman Empire. You've got to picture the audacity.
Like, listen up, Rome. Big guy here. Got something to say. But it's also more than that, right? He doesn't just drop knowledge and peace out.
More personal.
Way more. He talks about wanting to visit these Roman Christians, like longing to. It's kind of vulnerable almost. What do you make of that?
Shows you something about the man himself.
Right.
Not just about spreading the word, but about connection. Don't forget, Christianity, it's still brand new. Finding its feet in a world run by Roman power, Roman tradition, everything Roman.
And those early Christians, scattered all over, facing danger a lot of the time, connection must have meant the world.
Absolutely. It's like this thread running through everything. The need to come together to share the experience. Powerful stuff, even now.
It's true. Centuries later, we're still moved by this guy wanting to just be with those believers. Okay, but zooming out again, this letter's going to Rome. That's not random.
Not at all. Imagine that energy. The mix of people, the sheer size of Rome. Mid-1st century AD.
Melting pot. Every belief, every culture, all flowing through this one place.
The center of the empire. Where the power was, the influence, everything.
And into that steps Christianity. Wild.
Right. These two worlds colliding. The might of Rome and this little faith still figuring itself out.
Well, what would that even be like, being a Christian in that environment? Intense.
That's what I love about this kind of deep dive. It's like time travel, right into a moment so different from ours, yet asking these questions that still matter. How do you live your faith when everything around you says it's wrong?
Makes you wonder how Paul's whole message would have landed on those Roman years. Stuck between two worlds like that. Speaking of, how does he even start talking about this good news, this gospel he's so fired up about?
He's not shy, that's for sure. Paul doesn't hold back on the big claims.
Understatement. This is a man with something to say.
Exactly. And that's why he's so interesting. This fire, this deep thought. But also, he knows how to talk to people. And in the next part, we'll see just how good he is at laying it all out. This good news. It's central to everything he does. Told you he doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
Romans 1.1 sees 17, right? He lays it down, and it's echoed for, like 2,000 years.
Give it to me then. What's he say that's so world-changing?
For I am not ashamed of the gospel, he says, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in it, the righteousness of God is revealed. Like the man's mission statement. Boom, right there.
That's a lot to unpack. Gospel, salvation, righteousness. These aren't just everyday words, even now. Where do we even begin?
Gospel first. Good news. Simple as that. But you got to hear it Paul's way. This isn't like winning the lottery good news. It changes things.
Okay, so it's big, but how so?
It's the message that humanity, through Jesus, we get this restored relationship with God. Things were broken, right?
Yeah.
But now there's a path back to healing, to being whole.
So it's about connection, but on this huge scale with God. Heavy stuff.
But then he says righteousness. And that one always trips me up. What did that even mean to Paul? Why is it so core to his whole deal? Now that is where it gets fascinating. See, back then, righteousness.
Yeah.
You earned it. Following the law, every little rule, every ritual. Paul flips the script. Hard.
How so?
He's saying true righteousness, the kind that matters. It's a gift. From God, straight up. Not something you muscle your way into, but something you open up to. Through faith in Jesus. It's given to you.
Wow. To think you don't have to earn it, that it's just there?
Yeah.
That must have blown some minds back then. It still does now. This pressure to be good enough, to deserve good things. Paul's like, nope, different story altogether.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the radical part. It's liberating. Not about jumping through hoops, but about accepting this gift, this righteousness through faith, and boom, your relationship with God. Transformed.
It really makes you think differently about, well, everything. Who we are, why we're here. But he doesn't just leave it at that. He says the salvation bit, it's for everyone who believes. But then, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. Why even make that distinction?
See, now we're getting into Paul's own journey, right?
Right.
And the whole early church scene, how it was developing. This guy, he's Jewish, born and raised, deeply rooted in all the scriptures, the traditions. That's his foundation for understanding God.
But now he's got Jesus in the mix, and he's got to figure out how it all fits.
Exactly. He's not ditching his roots,
Yeah.
but he's building a bridge, showing how this good news about Jesus, it connects back to God's promises to his people, which, by the way, wasn't easy.
Sounds messy.
Oh, total mess. Early church, full of arguments about who was in, who was out, what the rules were. Jewish Christians, Gentile Christians, all trying to figure out how to be Christian together. And these weren't just like ideas. This was their lives.
It's a good reminder that even back then, things weren't so simple,
Yeah.
you know? It humanizes them. These figures we always hear about, they argued, they messed up, they were figuring it out as they went. Just like us, when you think about it.
Totally. And it shows how interpreting these texts is never just black and white. It's about understanding where they're coming from, the different viewpoints, the whole context.
And speaking of not so simple, Paul, after this hopeful message, he goes kind of dark, doesn't he? Romans 1:1-8:32, he gets into, well, what he sees as humanity totally messing up, rejecting God.
Right? The catalog of vices, as it's often called, and for good reason. Paul's not sugarcoated. It's a full-on reality check. What happens when you turn away from the divine?
Yeah, no kidding. Idolatry, hardened hearts, just a whole list of things he sees as signs of this broken bond with God. Quite a shift from good news, right? So why the downer? What was he going for? And how would people back then have felt hearing this?
Yeah, those are the million-dollar questions. And ones we'll dig into as this deep dive continues.
So last we left off, Paul was getting real about humanity heading in the wrong direction, yeah. Turning away from God, the whole deal. Why even include that after talking about hope and good news? What's the strategy there?
Classic move, actually. It's like, before you offer the solution, you got to make sure people feel the problem. Paul, he's smart. He wants his audience to get it, how deep the struggle is, what happens when you're disconnected from the divine. Then, the solution he's offering, it hits different.
Makes sense. Hey, things are rough down here, B-U-T, that kind of thing. Though it's not like he's just making this stuff up, right? This worry about losing your way, about morality, all that. People back then, they'd relate to that.
Oh, absolutely. Paul, he wasn't in a vacuum. His world, it was Jewish thought, Greek philosophy, even Roman everyday life, all mixed up. This anxiety he's talking about, straying from what's right, losing that connection to something bigger. It was everywhere.
So even folks who weren't on board with the whole Jesus thing, they might still hear that and be like, yeah, something's off about how we're living.
Exactly. It's deeper than just religion, right? It's about being human. What are we doing? What's the point? Are we messing it all up? Those questions were in the air.
And still are, let's be honest. Makes you think. Even now, when so much feels chaotic, people are searching for that meaning, something to hold on to. Paul was on to something.
For sure. And that's the beauty of diving into these ancient texts. They aren't just history lessons. They're like reflections. We see ourselves in them, our own worries, our own hopes, the whole deal.
It's been quite a journey, huh? We just scratched the surface of Romans, and it's already got us thinking hard. What stands out to you as we wrap this up? Any big takeaways from these opening verses?
You know, it's the contrast that gets me. On the one hand, you've got this passionate, almost desperate plea. The good news is real, people. Transformation through Jesus. It's possible. But right alongside it, this stark look at how messed up things can get. That tension, that's the heart of it, I think. Recognizing our own brokenness, but then this potential too. Powerful stuff.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Definitely leaves you with more questions than answers, in a good way. If you had to sum up this first chapter, though, what would be the core message?
It's a challenge, I'd say, to see things differently. Ourselves, the world, the whole shebang. Paul, he's saying, yeah, it's broken, but it doesn't mean it's over. There's this possibility of change through faith, and that changes everything. How we act, how we treat each other. It's a ripple effect.
A call to action that's echoed for, thousands of years? Not bad, Paul. Thanks for being with us on this deep dive, everyone. We just dipped our toes into the ocean that is Romans, but hopefully you're feeling a little more daring now. Go explore it some more.
And keep those questions coming. The more you dig, the more you find. That's the fun part.
Until next time, folks, keep seeking, keep learning, and most importantly, keep diving deep.